Have a seat on your porcelain throne. It's time to talk some shit on the Powell Movement.
Welcome to the Powell Movement. I'm your host, Mike Powell, and another week, another hospital stay for my poor wife, Ange. This week, she's had 2 more surgeries that changed life a little more for the worse. While I'd love to say we were taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back, it seems like we're taking 1 step sideways and then 1 step back, and that sucks. You know, you always hear people say, fuck cancer, and I never knew exactly what that meant other than cancer totally sucks, but being on this journey with Ange, between the pain, the suffering, the tears, the throwing up, the depression, when it's bad, it's beyond comprehensible, and I understand what fuck cancer means, and you just have to really try and keep pushing forward. And it's so easy to say, but this is a battle for life, and I've never experienced emotions or pain or anything even close to this. I hope you never experience anything like it. And a ton of you have been asking how you can help. And while no one should feel obligated by any means, because I know life is difficult out there and things are hard, but we have set up a GoFundMe, and I want to thank all the people who have donated, who have shared the GoFundMe link. It's really going to help. And while it's really strange and emotional to see all the donations rolling in from friends, family, and strangers, we really are feeling the love. Thank you for that. Now it's time to tell you about the podcast this week, and it's another good one. Khai Krepela was one of the top urban or street skiers in the world for a stretch. And while he slays everything, Khai was smart. He found out where he fit into pro skierdom, and that's urban skiing, and then he owned that spot. And then when his career was winding down, he didn't try to string along a couple more years of skiing rails and breaking his body. He found himself landing a position as the point man behind all things K2 skis, and now he's the CMO at Elan Skis. I'd been trying to get Khai on the podcast for years, and we were finally able to make it happen. But before I get into it, I want to thank you for listening each week, and I want to ask you to support the incredible brands who have been sponsoring this podcast through the good, the bad, and the ugly. They are Elan Skis, Outdoor Research, Stanley, and Best Day Brewing. Now it's time to chat with Khai Krepela. I was hoping that your middle name wasn't something like Keith or anything that started with a K, because that would be terrible if you think about it. But your name is River Khai Charles Downing Krepela. What's the story behind your name?
Krepela.
Krepela, my bad, yeah.
No, it's all good. Everybody gets it wrong. It's kind of funny. It's not that exciting. And honestly, I don't really know where the 2 first names come from. So I was born at home in Woodland, Utah, and it was right next to a river. And so my mom, quite a bit of a hippie, wanted to name me River. And I have the feeling that my dad leveled with her and said, yes, you can name him River, but we're going to call him Khai. And I think that's where the 2 first names came from. And then Charles, just middle name of my dad and both my grandfathers. And then, hyphenated last name. But it's definitely a lot.
Yeah, man, it's many words for someone's name. You don't hear too many people that have that. Do you have any other nicknames?
Not really. I mean, back when I was in grade school, I was called Kizzle, but with having, many different kind of unique names, I've just kind of gone by those.
Okay. All right. Well, we're not going to bring up Rail God 420 because we know that 420 is not part of your repertoire, but that was a nickname that Jason Arens gave you back in the day, and somehow it stuck for a little while. But we won't talk about that. We'll talk about growing up in Park City, and I would think that's a dream place to grow up. But it's not like you're the Park City rich kid. Did your folks move to Utah with ski bummery in mind?
Yeah, kind of both. So my dad and mom both moved to Park City in the early 80s. My dad was definitely chasing the ski bum lifestyle, and weirdly enough, I still don't understand how my mom ended up in Park City, because back then it was a tiny town, nothing going on, houses cost $20,000, and she's not a skier, and she just fell in love with the West. She's from Michigan. My dad's from California. They met there. She was a cocktail waitress. My dad was an avid bar goer, and, so on and so forth.
All right. So it is a ski bum who meets his cocktail waitress who makes the dream happen. And when that happens in a resort town, and I know you're a family of, I think, eventually 4, but it's 2 in the beginning. It's you and your older sister. And when it's ski bumming, it's like you're not going to be as privileged as maybe some other people in the community. Are you the kid that was always skiing on hand-me-down gear and shit?
Yes and no. It's kind of, as people know, when you grow up in a ski town, sure, my dad was a carpenter. My mom was a waitress until she founded her landscaping business. But people, so you have every connection possible. And so, my dad's old roommate is the general manager of Jan Sports. So like I'd have, people in the community helping us out. And then, it's not like we were poor. My parents could get me some stuff. I just wasn't driving around in a Porsche.
But a lot of kids are in that town, I feel like. There's two different levels. There's like the super rich and the people that support the super rich in those towns. And it's not like you're poor supporting the super rich, but you're there to make that dream happen, I feel like.
Totally. Yeah. It's kind of how I've leveled it out is there's the super rich and then the people who make money off of the super rich.
Yeah, totally.
That's just kind of what it is. And, it's a little different these days, but definitely growing up, there was a much more of a working class. It's not quite like that anymore, but it was a special time, in the 90s and early 2000s. It was quite a clash, but at the same time made for a really cool growing up experience.
And what else was really special about the late 90s, early 2000s is inline skating. And that was absolutely huge at that point. And you were one of those kids that grew up in inline skating. When does that start for you? And did you guys have skate parks around Park City? And was that pretty serious for you?
Yeah, so it kind of started like it's funny, you name an old Park City professional skier, and when we were all 10 years old, we were all at the skate park rollerblading, and that's kind of
like the Battersbys and stuff like that?
Battersby's, the Peters, Stephen Thomas, McRae Williams, all of them. We were all just there, and it was just our community, and we were skate park rats, and at that time, rollerblading was super cool, so that's what we all did because it translated so well to skiing. I mean, that's definitely how I kind of got my introduction into that space, actually. I got sponsored and ended up going to a private elementary school where I met McRae Williams, and he introduced me to both rollerblading and to like freeride skiing or freestyle skiing.
So wait, you got sponsored and went to a private elementary school? What does that mean?
What that means is that's a nice way of saying my mom was landscaping for a really rich family and they felt bad for us, so they paid for us to go.
Oh, well, that is super nice. And that is, people do have great hearts. So that's awesome. Yeah. And you get introduced to freestyle skiing and blading at that point. So I'm guessing there's no like full on program as you're coming up. You're learning everything through your friends and as you go. And another thing I kind of saw through your family is like you have two younger sisters who are way younger, like 8 or 9 years younger. So I'm guessing there might be a split up or something in the family around when you're like 10 or 11 years old.
It happened actually pretty early on. My mom and dad split when I was about 2 years old. So honestly, no memory of them ever being together. So no trauma there. Yeah, my dad remarried when I was about 4 or 5, I think. And yeah, he had 2 daughters, my 2 half sisters, Sophia and Olivia. They're great, fantastic. It's kind of weird because they're now well into their 20s and making me feel shockingly old.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking that maybe the split up kind of got in your head and you decided to just focus on skiing and blading. And next thing you know, things are coming together and people are noticing who you were. That didn't really happen, but you did go head first in both skiing and blading. And they're both not just something that you did, but I'm guessing that you dive head first into the culture of both of those. And were you like with skiing, were you all over New Schoolers? And with blading, were you all over BMAG and putting up edits? And were you that kid?
Totally. Yeah. So like at 13 years old, I was all about rollerblading. That was my focus. Skiing was something I did in the winter to get me to the summer so I could go skate. And yeah, I was all over, Daily Bread. Louie Zamora was like my absolute idol.
I love that guy.
Yeah, it was great. And I actually have a great story when I eventually did get sponsored. So kind of a mentor of mine was this guy, Cameron Card.
Dude, I know Cameron.
Yeah, Cameron's the man. He's a legend. I think he's out in Pennsylvania now. Owe him a lot, and we became kind of like friends. He a bit of like a mentor to me, and he filmed me. And it's funny because I stayed out skating so long that I ended up getting grounded because I missed my curfew. And the next day I get a call from the random number, and it's Louie Zamora offering me a sponsorship for Deshi skates.
No way.
And that was my first sponsor. And yeah, having your idol randomly be on the phone is huge on one side, and then to offer you a sponsorship, it was like, probably top 5 days of my life. And, at 13 years old, that's happening pretty early on.
Yeah, man, that's incredible. And it's almost like a blessing in disguise that blading didn't work out for you when you look at the trajectories of where the sports went, because Louie and Deshi, that was kind of the end of Louie's prime. He came back to K2 at some point, but whatever. What an amazing dude. And it's pretty cool that you got to be on like his and Randy's whole kind of program. And that was the hottest shit in skating at that point. Every kid wanted destruction and all that stuff. and you were in the middle of it. Did you really think skating is going to be your future? Was that kind of the thought process as a teen?
I'd like to think I was thinking that far ahead, but I was just obsessed and money wasn't a thing. I didn't even know how like sponsorship deals worked or anything. I just knew I was getting free skates and that I might end up in a movie. I wasn't the most forward thinking kid at that time. I knew what I liked and I just wanted to do that.
And did that get to your head at all when you first get sponsored and people give you free stuff, or are you still the same kid?
For sure. It's funny. I have a memory in my head of a friend of mine actually kind of calling me out and being like, hey, you're getting pretty cocky. Because I was, young. I was one of the best kids, and I was definitely the kid getting the most recognition in Park City specifically. And it did get to my head a little bit. I remember Garrett Sale, shout out to you for keeping me humble, him calling me out for it. And I remember talking to my mom after that and being like, that really grounded me. And I won't say I was never cocky again, but that was definitely the first time I'd ever been aware that that was something I could do.
Yeah, it's interesting that you even recognize that, because some people don't even figure it out until it's too late and they've already offended so many different people. But sounds like you were able to figure that out pretty quickly. How does it transition from inline being everything to kind of shifting over to the park and skiing? When does that happen for you where it's like, wait a second, I think I like snow better than I like asphalt?
So it didn't happen in that kind of pattern. Really what happened is I was very into skating, and kind of funny is I got really good really young, but as I, 14, 15 years old, people started catching up to me and I couldn't keep up with others, and I just lost my passion for it. And that had been my whole life, for the past 5 years. And at that point, that was a quarter of my life. And so I just kind of focused on just being a normal high school kid, doing the normal things, going over to friends' houses, trying to learn how to talk to girls, sneaking beers here and there. And skiing didn't really come in until probably my senior year, when I kind of got in this group of friends that we would film each other and, just post on New Schoolers and got a little bit of recognition. This is kind of around the time that 4x9 was really coming up. So obviously we idolized all those guys. And that's kind of when it really started taking hold on what I wanted to do in life. And I think that's about how it worked out.
And do your blade skills? I mean, I would think that since you're able to balance on a quarter on so many different features on your blades, that the second you get on a pair of skis, I would think everything after a day or two is pretty easy when it comes to balancing rails. Did you find that?
Totally. I mean, there's definitely I think everybody kind of knows, and definitely me, that I gravitated towards rails because of skating and because of those balance skills that I learned. And that's why I never really became the biggest jumper, because, on skates, the biggest you're going is 15 feet, not 80 feet.
Yep. So the skills transfer over, and you're that little kid that's greasing every rail in Park City. But before you were on the surface team or before you were on the line team, there was the Vice Skis team. And how does that whole thing come together?
Yeah, that was actually a really cool experience, because that, in a weird way, I definitely didn't know it at this time, but that kind of started my unique understanding of the ski industry. So my dad, who was a carpenter, ended up buying a CNC machine, and I was the operator for it. And this guy, Scott Berry, owner of Vice Skis, approached him to make their ski cores. So that's what I was doing, and making ski cores. And I was a half decent skier at the time. So I was on the Vice team, which was really just me. And I made their first park ski. And it was super fun to actually kind of try and design a park ski and learn how cores worked and learn about bonding and stuff so early on. And that's definitely my first sponsor in skiing. And it was just, another small ski shop in Salt Lake. I think they're still pressing skis every once in a while.
But it's cool that you get to work next to your pops and you guys get to mill cores together, and you get that bonding time with your dad, but you also get to make the skis that you're going to be skiing on, which is pretty cool. And the biggest thing that you did with Vice is that you put a welcome to the team video out that turned a lot of heads, and no one knew who Vice was, but you had rails in that video that were already pushing what people were doing. Was that the first time that people really started talking about you?
Totally. Yeah, that was trying to remember who filmed it. I think it was Jeffrey Wenzel. But yeah, that was just the first time I remember I was just on that day. I was always pretty consistent, but whatever, everything fell into place that day. And I landed everything I tried, and I filmed that entire edit, I think, in about 4 hours, and posted that up, and it ended up blowing up on New Schoolers. That's definitely when my name started to get thrown around. I don't know about the industry, but at least the core kids who are the ones who pay attention, right?
Yeah, totally.
And that's actually what ended up leading to Surface because they saw that video.
They see that video, and then I think in like 2010, you get invited to Surface Week at Wendell's. And I think that's where you first really connect with Mike Snyder. He's the founder of Surface. And he's one of those dudes that saw you and was like, I'm going to do a lot for this kid because he has potential. Would that be fair to say?
It happened a little bit different. A good friend of mine, Krill, was working at the Coswell shop and showed him the video. And Mike was like, let's put him on the team. And no more than 4 days later, I'm on a trip to Aspen with Mike and Banks Gilberti. It was a very quick transition of just like, hey, real ski brand, a little bit of money behind it. I wasn't getting paid at this time, but Mike saw it and he's like, we want him. I see it. They took me under their wing immediately. No questions asked.
And that dude definitely, like, he was there to support you and help grow your career. He wasn't just like some dude who wanted you to sell 10 pairs of skis.
No, not at all. I mean, Mike and I still talk to this day. We talk, semi-frequently. That was never his thing. Like, yeah, of course he wanted to grow like a company that made money. If you're in business, you want to make money. That's just the end of the day.
Yep.
But no, he really cared about each one of his athletes, and like having me come in there, he coached me and kind of walked me through stuff and like opened my eyes to going from a kid who loves to ski and just wants to go skiing to like trying to figure out how I can make this into, somewhat of a career.
Yeah, because it's like after high school, it's not like you go to college and you figure out this whole business thing. It's like you go start milling ski cores and you learn the business of skiing from the ground level where you're sweeping up the sawdust one day, then you're skiing on the product the next, and you kind of work your way up through every different level. So Mike helps you out there. And what's strange is like when you think about the team, I mean, you had Banks, you had Blake Nyman, you had Ian Wade, Jordan Selden, and were you just like the one rail kid who's like, hey, we're also going to have this urban kid that's going to blow people's minds?
Yeah, I didn't even think about it. I was just stoked to be there. At that point, I don't think I had quite fallen into like my rail only ways. Like I was still trying to do jumps. I think that's right around the time I did my best jump tricks. But no, it was just cool. I mean, this is the vibe of Surface. It was tight pants. I wore tight pants. Everything was like the same. It's funny reliving this too, because I actually just talked to Blake Nyman and we've been reliving this a little bit, but it was just an amazingly cool experience to join a team like that and like kind of start to feel like kind of like a professional skier.
Yeah, and they definitely had their moment in the sun for a few years back then. They're still around and Jason Arens is running them and a part owner. But I mean, they were making an impact, especially right when you were with them, that like the whole industry saw. It wasn't like, who is this boutique brand? Surface was in the conversation for a little bit.
Totally. I mean, I feel like it was one of the first brands that came in and it was like counterculture a little bit. Like everything was like rap and big pants and everything up to that point. And it was all of a sudden, here's like some kind of Hesh kids who listen to alternative music. And I think a lot of people like were drawn to that, especially in the era that it was in. And it was just the first one and it blew up everywhere. I mean, people still talk about that era of Surface skis. I mean, Jason's done a fantastic job with it from these days, but that era of Surface was a moment that I'm not sure we'll ever relive.
No, it was the moment in snowboarding where everybody was getting on their motorcycles and doing motorcycle camping trips and being the artsy snowboard brands. And that was the only one in ski at that point was the whole Surface collectives. It's time for my first sponsor break, and I'm going to start things out with Elan Skis. And while I could tell you all about the new award-winning Ripstick ski models or the award-winning Playmaker Twin Tip line, and then push you to demo them at your local shop because they're going to make you have more fun on the mountain, I'm just going to talk about your local shop. There's something special about stepping into your local ski shop. The smell of the freshly waxed skis, discussions about where to find the best skiing, what the shop kids like skiing on best, what they think the best products are, and that expert advice makes these shops more than just a great place to buy gear. Elan believes that ski shops are the soul of skiing, a place where skiers come together for genuine human connection. And that can't be replaced online. And I agree with them. I mean, going to a ski shop is an experience where you connect with a like-minded person who, in a short conversation, understands what you want to do and sets you up with the right gear so you can have as much fun as possible. Shops are among the last authentic pieces of ski community that we have left. So please buy your ski gear from your local ski shop. You can find a list of Elan dealers nationwide over at elanskis.com. My final sponsor this round is Stanley. It's hard to be known for both being that green bottle that kept your grandpa's coffee hot and being the most popular product in pop culture. But that's what Stanley is these days, and that's what you get when you mix in the quality that Stanley has been known for since they pretty much created the category of keeping drinks piping hot and ice cold in 1913. And lately, over 100 years later, that quality, combined with some incredible colorways, partnerships, collaboration, and events, has made Stanley bigger than ever before. And while they're creating some game-changing marketing, working with people like Olivia Rodrigo and Messi, are you kidding me? That's so cool. But what I love is how functional Stanley's products are. I personally use a Stanley pint glass every single day, and I swear by them. And my wife and so many others out there can't live without their Stanley quenchers. I mean, Stanley makes a product for everyone, and now everyone can get Stanley's incredible products in a colorway that totally suits their style, like my new Miami Vice colored pint glasses. I love my Stanley stuff, and I want you to love Stanley too. And I bet you didn't know that Stanley offers Powell Movement listeners their biggest discount that they make available to the public. That's right. I'm going to save you 30% on all of your Stanley products. Here's what you need to do. Go to stanley1913.com, go shopping, and at checkout, enter the code POWELL2025. That's a capital P and then the numbers 2025 with no spaces in there, and you're going to save that 30%. Those are my sponsors. Now let's jump back into the podcast. You had the Good Enough web series, and that went on for a while. But filming-wise, it started with Toy Soldiers with you. How did you end up hooking up with the Bozeman crew?
That ended up happening because they were down in Utah. Actually, yeah, this all happened at the same time. They were down in Utah, and they were shooting with Carl Fosfet. And Carl, who's an old, longtime friend of mine, was like, hey, there's this guy, Khai. He should come shoot with us. And I think it was Shane DeWalby and I can't remember, Johnny Durst, and then somebody else. But yeah, dude, so we went and just shot this like pretty classic street spot in Park City, like, a little bridge rail. And I think I did like 4 tricks, and it was set in stone after that. And they're like, you should come up to, Bozeman. I got a couple of shots in their first movie. And then, the next year they're like, come up, let's do a full segment. And that was my intro to filming movie parts. And that's definitely like where I realized like competition is not for me. This is way more fun, way more creative. You get to go a lot of cool places, but you don't have to fall in the line of what other people consider as good.
Well, I would say that too, but one thing about you, and I was going to bring it up later in the podcast, and it's going to ruin my notes, but I'll bring it up now. So competition-wise, when you think about yourself, while your street rail and park rail game is 2-3 levels above most pro athletes, your jump game is maybe 2 levels below a lot of the big time pros. And I don't mean that to insult you, but was there ever a time to think like, if I were to focus on the jump part of skiing, then I could be on a shit ton of podiums? Because no one can touch you in the rail sections, it seems like. And that's where a lot of people fuck up. And if you would have the jumps, it's like you could go to any contest and be someone that could be on the podium.
Yeah, I definitely had those thoughts, but I'll just admit the talent wasn't there. I didn't have the air awareness. Like I tried and it just wasn't there. And that's where I learned I might not be the best at jumps, but I'm very good at rails, and that's my brand. And that's what I'm going to push. And that's what I'm going to push to be the best at. And that's how I'm going to like find my niche in this industry and have it take me places. And that's exactly what it did. I tell kids this a lot when they ask like, how do I become a professional skier? I'm like, it matters most that people care what you do. You could be the best skier in the world, but if nobody cares what you're doing, then you're not going to go anywhere. And that's kind of what I did. I just realized what I was good at. I realized what people like to watch me do and that I like to do. And I just really leaned into that. And that's what took me to all these places.
And were you that kid who was winning, like, because in the early 2000s, there was a rail jam every weekend. So while you weren't doing, the big park contests, were you winning all the rail jams? And I know you did, like you won the Rails to Riches or whatever was at Killington that one year for 5K. But I mean, I'm guessing that there is still a competitive nature to you. And how did that go in the rail jam era?
I definitely won my fair share of rail jams. And I don't know if you remember the Cricket Rail Jam or Cricket Campus Rail Jam Tour, like definitely competed in that. I think I won one of those and I got third in another. And then, just local ones. And it was great, but it was kind of that time where like, if it wasn't Rails to Riches or anything, like it was just a local rail jam and nobody really cared. Like I would like win a pair of skis and sell them for $300 and like that's how I would pay rent. But it wasn't cleaning up by any means. My first time ever seeing like a substantial amount of money was that Rails to Riches contest. I remember when they handed me the envelope full with 5K cash, like at that point was the most money I'd ever seen in my life. And I was speechless.
Yeah, man, that's got to be an amazing feeling when you get that for skiing of all things, which is so crazy.
Oh, yeah.
The next thing I'm going to talk about is I think it's around 2013. You're on a road trip to SIA. You're already on Surface and Coswell and Joystick. What was the plan for SIA? Were you going to go there and get other sponsors, or what was your plan for the trade show?
Man, a bit of trying to like network and meet people. But I think at the end of the day, we all know that I went there to party.
Okay.
I was in a big party phase.
And what was the most fun? Because I know Snoop played there and all kinds of different people played the trade show over the years. What was the biggest night for you? What was the most fun, debaucherous night at the trade show?
Oh, man, there's so many. The one that's sticking out to me is just 15 of us packing into a hotel room in a sketchy part of town and going to the Zion Eye show and drinking a fair share of tequila. And I remember for some reason was drunk enough to create some hand signal and was able to get the attention of one of the guys on stage to throw the hand signal. And he gave me a very funny look because I was just drunk enough to be annoying enough to get him to do it. That's the one that sticks out, but there was so many. I mean, the Knights of the Hilton, you've been there, you know how it goes. It's like they kind of all blend together.
Well, usually when I went there, it was more to work as much. And when you're going there as a skier, you're going there to enjoy sponsors spending money and throwing parties and stuff like that. I was more on the business end of like, I've got to be up at 8 a.m. And given I did have some good times at SIA, but not like a 20-year-old Kai trying to go drink his face off and put 15 people in a hotel room. But the biggest part of SIA, maybe that year, I'm not sure if it was or not, you get a deal with Full Tilt, and I don't know if it's through SIA or not, but with Full Tilt, I read somewhere that you said that was your first pair of brand new ski boots. Is that true?
Yeah, that was true. Okay, that might not be totally true, but pretty much. Like I would always my mom would get them from like the equivalents of like the local thrift store, like hand-me-downs from friends. It was just, boots were expensive and I was like skis or boots and I would always go for skis. And finally, actually the first time I got Full Tilts, I had to buy them. Shout out to Josh Melchek, but he did not see the value in me right away. So he just gave me a code and I bought 2 pairs of boots and sold one of them. So it was free. After that, he started giving me some free boots. But yeah, that's the first one. I think I still have a post on my Instagram deep down of me trying to sell like the OG Tom Walsh boots.
Oh man, that is so funny. And just on the topic of money in skiing, you said $5,000 was the most you ever made in a contest. How much is the most you ever made from skiing in a year? I mean, have you made $50,000 in a year from skiing?
No, not even close. I'll admit that I was not a great advocate for myself. And I think the most I probably ever made was 20.
Okay.
And like, I did not exit my professional career net positive. I was definitely in debt.
Well, if you're not advocating for yourself, you're not going to make things happen. That's just how it is. And you know that from your next job when you're team manager or you're doing marketing stuff. But that's a little bit later in the story. But that means you probably always had to have jobs during your ski career. So is it working all summer and then skiing all winter? Or were you working during the winter as well? How did you operate that way?
It was mainly working. Like, in the early years, I definitely had jobs. Like, when I got started with like the Good Enough crew out in Tahoe, I was working at Woodward Tahoe, making money here and there. And then over the summers, typically I was working for my mom's landscaping company. Worked there for, roughly 8 years, running crews, hot 10-hour days. But yeah, I never was making enough off of skiing to just fuck off and not do stuff over the summer. And it was either that or, going up to Mount Hood and coaching, which, as we all know, was practically not making any money.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I always worked. Never had a full year of just letting my skiing carry me.
Okay. And back to where we were when I started the financial part, it was all about SIA and you had gotten to SIA. I said you might have gotten a Full Tilt sponsorship there. I don't know. Who cares? Don't correct me because it makes it sound like I'm right now. And we'll keep moving further into it. And the next thing that really happens is you go home from SIA. And that's when you get maybe the biggest call of your ski career, I feel like. And I don't know if it's a call or an email, but that's when you find out that you're going to be part of Poor Boys Productions, right? On the way home.
Yeah, it was crazy. Once again, thanks to Carl. Yeah, I get a call. We're in Utah. I'm living in Tahoe at the time. I actually don't have any of my ski stuff with me, weirdly enough. And I get a call and it's like, hey, can you be in Detroit tomorrow? And that was me getting into the big league for sure. And so I had to scrap everything together. Luckily, I was in Salt Lake. I was riding for Surface and Coswell at the time. So I just went to the shop, got everything from them. I borrowed $600 from my buddy Mike and bought a plane ticket. And next thing you know, I was on my way to Detroit.
So this isn't a planned thing where you're getting the call and you're like, oh my God, I'm going to film with Poor Boys next year. It's like, holy shit, we're a man down. We need a dude. Can he be here tomorrow? You answer the call of duty, and that's really what lines up your whole career. Because given things will probably happen for you as you move forward, but getting with Poor Boys Productions, I mean, when you think about it, there's Poor Boys and Level 1 for the skiing that you're doing growing up. Who did you like more, Poor Boys or Level 1?
I mean, it depends on the era. I think I was more drawn to Level 1 in the later years, but definitely, like Every Day's a Saturday. Oh man, I watched that so many times. And like the early years of Poor Boys, I was definitely really, really, really drawn to. So it was like to get invited to go shoot with Poor Boys was a dream come true. And like, sure, I had to go to Detroit to do it because nobody else wanted to go to Detroit. But hey, I'm stoked because that kickstarted a lot.
So you go to Detroit, the things to get an urban segment that's never been done before with the decrepit buildings and the crumbling buildings there. You can really get some cool shit, but that's a scary place. It's not like the Range Rovers of Park City. It's a totally different environment. When you think about it, you're going into these buildings where you have to build these features and in-runs and stuff like that. What are the builds like? Are you going there and building for like 2 days and hoping you're not going to get killed while you're building?
Yeah, I mean, some of them definitely. I think our biggest build was a 2-day build because, we'd work with the snow we had, but there wasn't always snow. And so oftentimes we're using like trash to build the stuff. I mean, the closing shot of that segment, we built a jump at the Packard plant, which is the biggest abandoned building in America, I believe. And yeah, it was just cinder blocks, tires, all that stuff. And then we called in somebody to bring in ice rink snow. It's funny, everybody we talked to, I remember one spot we were at, the cops actually pulled up, and it was such a different experience because they pull up and they ask us, and I remember they said, have you been robbed yet? And we're like, no. And they're like, oh. And they seemed surprised, and then they just left. And it was just like, oh, the bus factor, it doesn't exist here. It's a different kind of factor. Definitely super cool. I'm happy I was young and bright-eyed and bushy-tailed because we were probably in a little sketchier situations than I even realized.
I mean, is it almost like you're more scared about the environment than the feature?
At certain times, for sure. I mean, we definitely were like scouted, a few times, and I'm not going to think that I know how like the inner workings of gangs work, but felt like we got scouted, definitely checked out. When you're in a bad area in Detroit, it's the nice cars you got to be worried about. And definitely had some like cars pull up, check us out. Right before I got there was a really bad interaction where these two cars with masked individuals tried to block them in, and they were able to get away. And that was like a day before I got there. So that was my welcome to is like, oh yeah, we got to be really careful and, always checking out your back.
Yeah, I remember that footage, and they put that in the movie, I believe. That's why I was asking about it, because I thought you might have been there for that, which had to be totally scary. Have you been in any other sketchy situations or had your gear stolen or anything? Because you're in the streets. It's not like you're at the manicured terrain parks of every resort in the world.
Yeah, I've been fortunate because, there's tons of horror stories. Like I know people who have had pieces pulled on them and like cameras stolen and just stuff. But I've kind of funny. The worst thing that's happened to not even me, but just us is that somebody broke into our car in Minnesota and stole Sandy Boville's bag with his computer and his passport in it. But never anything like where I was feeling scared for my life because I don't know. Like I said, ignorant.
All right. Well, when you see yourself on the big screen for the first time in a Poor Boys movie, can you talk about how that feels as like a human to see your dream come true and it happened when you're so young?
Oh, it was really incredible because I remember going to the premiere in Seattle, and I don't even know if it was necessarily seeing myself on the big screen. I think the thing that stuck out to me the most is sitting at the autograph table, and I'm sitting next to like Pep and the whole Stepped crew and Carl and like all of these like big names that I've looked up to and like idolized, and I'm sitting there and I'm sure to them I'm just the new guy, but to me I was like, oh wow, I'm here and I made it. And then go and watch it on the big screen, having people cheer. That segment was definitely the standout part of that movie. And, I'd say one of the standout parts of that year. So to be involved with it definitely was a really cool thing as my first, put it in the scrapbook as a memory of me putting my stamp on the ski industry.
And what is the highlight of doing a movie premiere like that, being in the movie and being part of that whole thing?
I've always said this, when a skier gets to go to a movie premiere that they worked on, that's the 1 week a year that they got to feel like a rock star. Everybody wants to talk to you. Everybody's happy to see you, signing autographs. It's everything you work for. It's kind of like filming is almost a bit of like secondary fun where, you put so much time and effort into it. And then you finally get to see it all put together and you know why you worked it. And so just to like show people all that hard work, all of like, the fear and like the struggles and stuff, and finally to be able to like show like the end piece of it to all these people who are just so excited, it just gives you this feeling that like, it's unmatched.
Yeah. And then when you get back to skiing after that season and that movie tour, you start spending more and more time skiing with Will Wesson. And you guys have a similar vision, I would say, and like similar types of rails. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I'd say it's fair to say.
Okay. And when I say similar, it's like the rails that you guys pick, you're not thinking about a trick onto a rail and off of a rail and all of that. You're more thinking the rail's going to dominate the shot and you've got to almost get through it. It's like getting through the rail is almost one of the harder parts. Is that kind of how you look at stuff?
Yeah, that's kind of where me and Will differed. And it was really nice because we always look for like creative spots or challenging spots or whatever. But how he looked at a spot, like he would look at like a creative way of hitting or something, where I would go for more like interesting and technical and hard rails, because balance was like probably my strongest suit. And so we worked really well together because we could ping off of each other, and every once in a while we'd hit the same spot, but we'd worked really well together, especially in those early years.
And you guys would hit things so different that it didn't really matter that you were hitting the same spot, right? Like you just had the different vision of how you wanted the trick. You guys liked the same shit though?
Yeah, that's it. It was like same, but different, and that it just made it really easy because, over the years, if you're with the wrong crew and they want something totally different, it can actually like really throw a wrench into like how a trip, operates. So it worked really well with me and Will.
Okay. And is the Will connection the reason that you get into level one, or how did that work out? Because it's like you did one film with Poor Boys and then from there on out, you become a fixture in level one.
Yeah. I can't remember exactly if someone like pinged, but I'm pretty sure that I just wrote Josh Berman and I was like, I want to come shoot with you guys. I really feel that like, I think Poor Boys is amazing, but I think that my style is better suited for level one. And, lucky enough, Josh gave me the opportunity. It was around Christmas time. He gave me the call and was like, hey, can you get to the East Coast to shoot with Friedel and Will? And as we all know, the East Coast is challenging, but it was a really successful trip, going from Boston all the way to like Burlington and shooting along the way, and getting quite a few really good shots on that is what solidified my position in level one.
And it sounds like you didn't have to have sponsor buy-in. I mean, with Poor Boys, they're calling you up and saying, be here tomorrow. So it's like you're your own sponsor trying to get there. And then when you get to level one, it's the same deal. It's like you're calling and be like, hey, man, I want to film with you. And Poor Boys hasn't come back and said you're filming with us next year. So you're able to call Josh and he actually works with you instead of having to get your sponsors to pay you in.
It's a combination of one, I often would get on the trips that nobody wanted to do. I was a hungry kid and, nobody wanted to go to Detroit. I was there right away. And then nobody wanted to go to the East Coast. So I was there right away. And I'm sure Josh tried to get some money from Mike, but at that point surfaced like it just wasn't an option. And I would assume that Josh just saw it as an investment, saw something in me, which is huge. I mean, that's a big reason I ended up getting as far as I did, is enough people seeing it in me. I mean, Josh saw it and he's like, you know what? I'll put him in this first year, and I'm sure that down the line this will pay off both in entertainment, but also in sponsor dollars, because that's how it operates.
Okay. And when you think of it, you shot with Josh, you shot with Poor Boys, you shot with Toy Soldiers, you shot with Good Enough and the Traveling Circus. Who's the most fun to shoot with in your whole career? Like, what are those trips that you're just like, man, that crew, it was special?
I had to say, Good Enough, those are my best friends. So, like, I love shooting with them, but I'd have to say out of like the actual like film crews, I had some really great times shooting with Johnny Durst, Sandy Boville, and Shay Lee, when we'd go do level one trips, because we all came up through Toy Soldiers, ended up working for level one. We just had been working together for so long, and like it was just a really fun time. It was a short era. I think only lasted like 2 years that we actually got to go on trips, but it was probably the most fun I've had on trips.
It's time for my second round of sponsors. And this time I'm starting out with Outdoor Research. I've been using OR products since I moved to Seattle almost 25 years ago because they outperform everything on the market. I mean, they build products to perform in the miserable weather that the Pacific Northwest can be known for. And when you live here, you need to have best-in-class gear, and that's what OR has always delivered. From building industry-leading gear for mountaineers, which are still best in class, to the mittens that every snowboarder wore in the 90s, which are making a comeback in a big way, to the new styles, cuts, fits, and kits that they've developed with the help of their incredible athlete roster that includes world champion Troy Podmilsack, freeski legend Mark Abma, and X Games gold medalist Zoe Atkin, just to name a few. While OR has always been building the best products to outperform everything else in brutal wet weather, the recent focus on style is what has not only me, but my kid and his friends all wanting to wear OR gear. Because now, it looks as good as it performs, and that's a bold statement. But don't take it from me. Head on over to outdoorresearch.com, check out the products, buy yourself something, and stay drier and warmer than ever before. My final sponsor is Best Day Brewing. And if you haven't heard of Best Day, they are hands down the best tasting NA beer on the market. I enjoy Best Day for so many reasons. The flavor is the most important. I swear by the hazy IPA, the Kolsch, and the Electro Lime. The beauty of Best Day is that it really tastes as good or better than an alcoholic beer. I mean, in a blind taste test, if I put an Electro Lime against any Mexican beer, 9 out of 10 times, my friends are going to pick the Electro Lime because they like it better. And you can drink a few of them at the bar or in the parking lot after skiing, and you don't have to worry about driving or making bad decisions. Really, I haven't quit drinking. When I go to the bar to have beers, I always mix in a few Best Days with the leaded stuff, so I can be more functional throughout the night, and an added benefit that I didn't expect was it makes me last twice as long. I mean, I can stay till closing time. I don't know what you were thinking, but if you want to have your best day or night ever, or just want to enjoy a few cold ones anywhere, grab a Best Day and you can forget about the calories, forget about the alcohol, and forget about getting in trouble on the way home. To see all the flavors and order some beer, head on over to bestday.com, and if you're flying on Alaska, you can enjoy a Best Day Kolsch at 30,000 feet. Those are my sponsors. Now let's jump back into the podcast. I think about the traveling circus as well, and it's like, Will, maybe he's not the connector of everything, but you go from surface to line, and you've established like a great working relationship with Will. Is Will a connector to line with you, or is that something that happens with you calling Josh or kind of working with Josh?
It kind of happened slowly. So what it was is I had reached a point in my career where I knew I had to start making money, and Surface just didn't have the capital to make that happen. And so I kind of just became a free agent, and Josh started sending me skis. I had already been filming with the Line Traveling Circus for so long. It was a pretty obvious transition. You know, at that point, I'd already done quite a few trips while I was still skiing for Surface. And over the winter, you know, they sent me the first renditions of the Honey Badger, and I was just skiing this blank white ski that on the bottom, the only graphic, it just said ski. And tested them out, really fell in love with the product, worked my way in, showed my worth, and Josh eventually gave me a contract the following year.
And so with Line, when you finally get in there, it's like the natural fit because you've got that traveling circus history. When you think about the most entertaining or just the most ridiculous trip that you did traveling circus-wise, what would that be?
Probably the most ridiculous was when we went to Russia, you know, just super foreign concept. You know, we went to, it's called New Star Camp, which is essentially like skiing meets spring break meets Russia. I mean, it was just funny to like, you know, be partying with a bunch of Russians, then skiing during the day, then sleeping, you know, 3 feet from Andy at night, and then getting up and starting it all over again. You know, tons of stuff happened. And then, you know, not quite the traveling circus, but there was always Tell a Friend tour, which Andy runs. And we'd always end up doing a week in Burlington during that time where we would party. We'd party pretty hard.
Well, that's what you're supposed to do on some of those tours, especially it's like you guys aren't pulling in the big bucks. You're doing it for the fun and for the love, and you got to blow off some steam. This is the area where I was going to talk about contests, and we're not going to talk about them anymore because we already did. But there was one that I didn't bring up, and it's one that you were pretty much made for. It was the X Games Real Ski thing. And when you get invited to something like that with some pretty heavy hitters, does that just make you realize that not only have you arrived, but you were in like the top 1% of everyone that skis urban?
Yeah, I mean, not only just to get invited in general, but to get invited on the second year, you know, as I saw it, I was like, okay, like I'm top 10 in somebody's eyes, which was humbling. And also, you know, it was amazing. I was honored. You know, I was skiing next to Henrik and Tom and Will and all, like, you know, all of these big hitters. And at that point, I still didn't see myself as one of the big hitters. And yeah, it made me really feel like I was one of them.
And when you're working on a shoestring budget like you are with everything, is it tough to invest in something like X? Because it's like a fan voted thing, I feel like. And or I'm not sure if the whole thing was, but from what I saw, it was fan voted. And if it's fan voted, you don't have a chance at winning with some of those names in there. So is it hard to invest in it?
It wasn't hard to invest because, I saw it as like my opportunity to really showcase my skills. Like street skiing is interesting because like to say someone's better or worse, I just don't think it works in that way. But I knew I could hold my own in that competition. I ended up not placing, still very proud of my part, but I wasn't intimidated by that. I gave it my all. I think the hardest part about that entire competition is, the fact that I was operating on a shoestring budget. I won't say it was not unfair, not at all, but I just didn't have a lot of the opportunities. I didn't have this film cruise. I had a busted winch. I maxed my credit card out 3 times. I remember when I was in Illinois, I maxed my credit card out and had to have my mom send me money so I could pay for gas to drive back. It was funny. I remember stressing out, and shout out to Tom, love you. But I remember talking to my mom and be like, this is crazy that I'm maxing out my credit cards. And Tom just bought his girlfriend at the time a BMW. And I was just like, this is insane.
He bought it a BMW maybe with his Visa sponsorship or something like that. Maybe I don't know if he.
Who knows?
Yeah.
And like I was definitely, a bit of feeling sorry for myself at that point. But I just remember just being like, this is psycho. I'm tapping everything out. I definitely put myself into a little bit of debt there. But, Jacob Callahan, my filmer, was such a trooper. We ran into everything. I mean, having trouble with snow and then, having a winch that works 30% of the time, it was a tough thing. But what we were able to produce and put out, we were super proud with. And I still love that part.
So you would get everything set up. You'd have the winch and everything ready to go. You get all mentally fired up. And when it's time to go, the winch just wouldn't work. And it'd be like, fuck, this happened again.
Yeah, the worst one of them is like in my part, I do this kind of like it's this bridge that had broken off, and there's kind of like this roof that's overhanging a little bit, and I do like a wall ride underflip off of it, and it was probably like a mile walk out to it on a snow track, so you can't wheel the winch out. The winch probably weighs like 150, 200 pounds, maybe more, and we carry it all the way out there just for it to not start. And we were sitting there pulling it and pulling it and pulling it. And I think at that point, it actually needed a new starter, which I didn't know anything about engines at that point. So we had to carry it all the way back. It was, I think, 3 days of wasted time just carrying this thing back and forth just to get one shot. And that was just, one of the many issues with that winch.
Oh man, that's brutal. And just thinking about what you're doing too. I mean, these features are not friendly to anyone by any means. So while you haven't had huge injuries, I'm guessing that you get broken off every session you ever have. It's like you're not going to leave a rail session without like 5 bruises. That would be kind of how it works, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you definitely get banged up. Like I was fortunate enough in my entire, career to never have like a season-ending injury. But yeah, I mean, definitely like you're always going to flat. You don't land the majority of the time. And yeah, you're just banged up. I mean, definitely I'm almost 34 now and I'm already feeling those years of street skiing.
Yeah, and I would think the whole season long, you're just one walking bruise that can't bump into anything because you're like, swellbow here, this, that, whatever. But that's part of it. And then when you think about it in the blading game, that's all like in the summer and it's more just like scabs and cuts and people in tight vans bleeding on each other. So it's like both of those worlds aren't the most fun in that respect. But when you think about having to up your ante every year, because people don't want to watch a level 1 movie where Khai doesn't do as gnarly features as he did last year or even close. So it's like you have to find more creative and bigger features year after year after year. Does it ever get not fun where you're just like, oh, I have to do this?
Oh, totally. So many times, actually. It's just that it's not for the weak heart. It's challenging, especially street skiing. You're not going to these like gorgeous, pretty places. I spent the majority of my winter in the Midwest, and the season, like, it's the bus factor, not having snow right, everything really gets to you. And, I can even say, I remember after X Games Real Ski, I'm very proud of what I put out, but it was so straining that I did debate on hanging up the skis at least for a year, just because it was so mentally draining that I didn't know if I could do it. Luckily, I ended up going on a really great trip with Tom and Mike Hornbeck and Nicholas Eriksson to Finland and Sweden that totally revamped me. But yeah, there's tons of times where it's just like, all of your favorite street skiers, we've been at each other's throats, not wanting to talk to each other for weeks or months after. It's mentally and physically straining. It's wild what goes into it.
And it's one of those things where it's like, if you want to be the pro skier that you are during your career, that's your little window that you are the best at. Like you said, you knew what people wanted to see from you and you tried to be the best at that. So you have to do that. Like, you can't be a pro skier if you're not going to be doing the street stuff. So it's like you're trapped into having to one up yourself every year. And while I would think that eventually it kind of gets to you and you just want to quit skiing, which you said you did a little bit there, I was going to ask how the pro skiing thing ends, but I follow you on Instagram, and I feel like there was like a cryptic message put up on Instagram one day that had like a bunch of K2 logos on your Instagram, but you're on the pro team of Line. So how did you get in-house with K2? What was going on behind the scenes while you're on Line's pro team?
Yeah, so funny. The way I got into K2 is I actually interviewed for a Line position, and it was going to be an in-house position. And I think it was like marketing coordinator or something. I was managing a Black Diamond retail store at the time.
And skiing for Line, right? So you're selling Black Diamond?
Yeah, it was like working full-time, doing that, skiing for Line, doing all that. I just saw that, I think at that point I was 27, 28, and I was like, okay, skiing obviously hasn't made me any money yet. I'm getting close to 30. I need to start figuring out a career path. And I had left my mom's landscaping business. So that took me into Black Diamond retail while I was still skiing for Line. And as I was trying to transition out, because I wanted to go to marketing, I interviewed for a Line position, ended up not working out because what they were able to pay, I did the math and I was like, I can't move to Seattle. I'll be losing money.
Yeah.
And that got my name floating around the office. And Tom Johnson had just, moved into this director position for both K2 ski and K2 snowboarding. And he was trying to find someone to fill the K2 ski. And they had interviewed a ton of people. Couldn't find anybody who really fit what he was envisioning, which was somebody who was just tied in the industry, who knew the ins and outs of primarily industry, and like the marketing stuff he wasn't super concerned on. You had to have some skills. And my name came up and he just gave me a call and he's like, hey, we have this position for senior marketing manager for K2 skis. Would you be interested? And yeah, pretty much from then on, I called Line, and it's kind of funny because it's all in the same office. And I was like, hey, I'm going to take this job with K2. I am no longer a professional skier.
Called Line up and you're like, I'm your boss, bitch. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding completely.
It was a funny conversation though with Connor. It was just like, yeah, so like, I'm going to be like working next to you now, which it was really cool. Cause I mean, I probably didn't have many more years of going at the pro skiing thing anyways. And it really like, that's the direction I wanted to go. I wanted to take all of the things that I had learned, starting from building ski courses, skiing professionally, to doing all this stuff. And I wanted to put it all together and, give back to the industry. And what better place to do that than K2,
Yeah, what was the most surprising thing that you learned when you went behind the curtain and got to see how everything worked?
It is a lot more complicated. I mean, just seeing it from the lens of a professional skier, you kind of get in tunnel vision of like, that is like the most valuable thing. But what goes on behind the scenes is so much. And then also, there's just not much money in skiing. K2 is one of the biggest brands in the world for skiing. And I saw the budgets and I now understand why ski contracts can be pretty small. It was definitely eye-opening, and going back to that whole, I didn't advocate for myself, to get more money, but I also saw in a way that like I was a street skier. I was in a super niche market and my ceiling was pretty low on what I could make, but I just didn't know that when I was a professional skier. I would love to complain I wasn't making enough money, and I got humbled once I was on the other side of the desk.
And I would think when you're on the other side of the desk, you don't realize how hard the job is or just how much time it takes. How many emails do you think you got a day when you're at K2?
Oh, and the prime minimum 50. Like, it was no go. I mean, yeah, you were at K2. You know how it goes. It was crazy. It was full go. And I had an understanding, actually, because like I'd known the majority of the people who had the position before me. And so I knew it was a burnout position. But holy, I was not ready for it.
Did being so busy and having so many different people to answer to and things to do, and then just the never-ending task list, did that ever suck the fun out of skiing for you?
Yeah, 100%. Maybe not total, like 100%, but it made it really hard. When you think about skiing all day, you're answering emails all night. Like, you want to break from it. And when you're working in the position, you just can't really get it. And, after being a professional skier for about a decade, like, my entire life had been like that. And so there was definitely some burnout times, especially, when it's go and go, 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 and you're working 15-hour days and you're just like, I just want to think about anything else. It did make it really difficult at times, for sure.
I know exactly what you're talking about, but the beauty of being with K2, are there tons of opportunities to do different stuff? I'm sure you traveled the world, but what was your K2 highlight?
My highlight definitely is just all of the time I got to spend in Europe. I practically was, spending about 50% of my time in Europe, and I made a lot of really great friends. I got to see different cultures and see stuff. And, in a weird way, I complain about the workload, but at the same time, I'm so grateful for the knowledge to just be scrappy and creative with solutions. And I feel like between going and seeing all these cool things, going sled skiing with Sam Kutch in BC, and like going and ripping groomers with Warner Nickerson in Austria, it was just like super cool experiences that, not a lot of people get to experience. And I'm so grateful for that.
And so those are highlights. What's your biggest mess up at K2? What's like the worst thing you did where you're like, holy shit, I'm losing my job?
It's kind of funny. The only time I ever really thought I was losing my job was actually my second day. I was flown up to Seattle. It was our go to market. I think it was 2021. And, I'd never worked a marketing job. I'd never worked a corporate job. And all of a sudden I'm sitting in an office with all of the bigwigs of K2. And during the go to market or global sales meeting, we all go and party after. And I'm nervous. So I end up drinking quite a bit. And the next day I come into work super hungover. Second day, don't know what I'm doing. And I remember the CEO, John Colonna, we're sitting in a meeting talking about the Piece collection coming out. And he turns to me and looks at me in the face, and he's like, Khai, who is our number one competitor in the Piece category? Who's doing it the best? And at this point, I didn't really know a whole lot about it. And so I just said the first company that I thought of, and it was Head. And so I said that with everybody looking at me. I'm feeling like such a goon. I'm so hungover. And I was like, I'm toast. The CEO has just seen through that I'm a fraud, and I'm getting sent home immediately. That was definitely, I think, my biggest mess up.
All right. And how did K2 end for you?
It ended this December. Unfortunately, I got the short end of the stick on some layoffs. Just pretty tough time in the industry. I don't hold any bitterness towards it happening because I know how corporate life works. But yeah, I was round 2 of, I think they're on their 4th or 5th round of layoffs right now. I could stay in contact, and yeah, it just brought me to an end. But I'm okay because honestly, the work culture, there's so many amazing, brilliant people there. But I'll go ahead and say that the leadership doesn't know how the pie gets made, and there was never enough people doing it. And so it works people to the bone. And I was thinking about leaving for a long time, and they just forced my hand.
Well, at least you get the severance out of that. Now you're the CMO at Elan Skis, which is a hell of a title. You're an executive. Give me your 30-second elevator pitch on what Elan Skis is.
Oh, man. So yeah, Hinterland, it's an incredible brand. It's very small. It's been a garage brand, but we're working on growing it. I mean, over the time in the ski industry, it's a hot topic right now with stuff getting made in China. We wanted to make a really high quality product that is still made by hand, that takes that care, using the best materials, and we're not scared of the cost. And that's kind of our whole pitch, is making great product that is made to last. We say it all the time, is it's not the best business practice, but if we can sell 3 pairs of skis in a lifetime to somebody because their skis last that long, that's a win for us.
All right. So that's a pretty interesting philosophy right there. But I like the spare no expense. And if you can afford it, I would think it's an amazing deal if you're not going to have to replace your skis. We could talk more about them, but we're not, because we're kind of getting to the end of where I want to go. But I want to ask you one question. You're one of the best rail skiers of our time, and your opinion is very valued when you think of other rail skiers. If you had to pick a top 5, who would they be?
Ooh, that's okay. Andreas Hotveit, number 1. That's just for sure. We'll put Tom Wallish, Will Wesson. We'll go Cyber Vol or Siver. And then just for the wow factor is Jesper. Can't deny. Maybe not my style, but he has done some absurd things.
And who's the dude where if a crew of 20 people go to a gnarly rail, who's the dude that's going to get it before everybody else every time because they're that good?
I will kind of change it a little bit. It's going to be LJ Stranio. Maybe not because he gets it first, but because that everybody else will give up and he will not.
Okay. He is just a beast when it comes to taking a beating. I mean, his real ski thing, I think I remember. A lot of stuff in that one. But that is the body of our podcast. But I don't end the podcast with the body. I do something that I call Inappropriate Questions. That's where I get someone that you know to ask 3 questions, and they can be anything. This week, I was able to get a great friend of yours and one of the best contest judges and trick callers ever. I'm talking about a 2026 Olympic head judge, Jason Arens. And are you ready for question number 1 from Jason?
Oh, God. Yeah.
All right, here we go.
Hey there, Khai. It's Jerry here. Mike has tasked me with coming up with a few inappropriate questions for this podcast episode, so here we go. 1. In your early days as an aspiring professional skier, did you ever find yourself in a situation that required you to live off the land? In other words, you needed to hunt or fish to provide yourself with meals.
Yeah, that's a good question, Jason. Yes. When I was living in Tahoe, I was so broke that I spent my last $30 and a little bit of my buddy Garrett Jurich's last bit of money on a couple crawdad traps, top ramen, and canned corn. And we lived near a lake, so I'd go trap crawdads every evening, and I would bring them back, and I ate crawdad soup for about 3 weeks. Yeah, that is a true story.
No way. Just that's all you had was crawdad soup and ramen?
And I think I also maybe bought some pancake mix. And so I had like a bit of pancakes in the morning, crawdad soup at night, and that's what I ate.
You're lucky you didn't get scurvy. Let's go with your question number 2.
2. This one's more of a hypothetical and also one that will have multiple choices as to what your response would be. You're leaving a bar and encounter an unhappy local bar goer in the parking lot who happens to be brandishing a gun in your direction. Your immediate reaction is one of the following. A, oh my God, that's a gun. B, whoa, calm down, let's talk about this. Or C, what are you going to do, shoot me?
Well, we're going to go with C from experience.
So what happens?
Not my proudest moment, but it happened.
And you call the guy's bluff. What are you going to do? Shoot me. And what does he do?
He doesn't shoot me. I'm
Yeah.
still here. So I guess I won that one.
Yeah. Pretty cool. Awesome that you had balls there. Let's go to question number 3.
And 3. Late night, you find yourself in a karaoke bar and you have only 2 choices of songs to pick from as to what you're going to perform. Those songs are A, Ring of Fire by Johnny Cash, or B, Scrubs by TLC. What's your choice?
Yeah, that's a good one because, Jason actually, this is a bit of a backstory to this one. Surface Week, and Jason is the pro host, so it's me and Banks Go Birdie, and we go out for the pro night, and we have a bit of sake on our way back. We walk past a karaoke bar. We're supposed to be going home, but Banks and I look at each other and realize that Jason can't actually leave us because it's his job to stick with us. And so we go into this karaoke bar. I had a lot of sake at this point. We commit to singing Ring of Fire by Johnny Cash, which we both know by heart. Would have done a great job, given this is the karaoke bar where people actually go because they sing well.
Yeah.
That was this place. And last second, it was my great idea to switch the song to Scrubs, which I don't know the words to other than the chorus. We're also very, very tuned up at this point. And we blow it and get booed off stage aggressively and kind of get booed out of the bar while Jason is laughing because of our plan backfiring so hard. And I have not done karaoke since out of the embarrassment.
Oh, that is pretty funny. Well, karaoke is really fun if you know all the words to the song. I highly recommend you do it. That is Inappropriate Questions, and that's our podcast. And your story is so interesting to me. First and foremost, because of your rollerblade, I want to say style, but you backslide everything through kinks anywhere. And I just saw you ski and I have a rollerblade background as well. And I was like, holy shit, man, that guy definitely blades. And then I think I probably saw your videos when you were younger. I mean, I was really good friends with Cameron and a bunch of all the kids in Utah. So, Carl Hills and all that crew too. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I knew that crew really well. So I'm sure I was aware of you in the rollerblade world because I did that stuff for K2. But then all that stuff transitions to ski. And what's cool is your dad's a ski bum. He gets to watch his kid. Unfortunately, he's not here anymore. I'm sorry about your loss, but he does get to watch his kid become a pro skier, which is pretty awesome. And then you realize skiing's never going to pay the bills. So you transition into pro marketing. You get a job with one of the greatest ski brands in the world. And now they're one of the greatest boot brands in the land. And, you know, it's a cool organic story that you took from the bottom to the top of like milling cores to getting to the best marketing job to being a CMO for Elan Skis. So I thank you for sharing your story and I thank you for your time.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was fun.
So that was time with Khai Krepela. And his story is rad because his pro ski career was spawned by blading and then street skiing. And when you look at street skiers, there's only like 15 that are pro level good. And most of those guys have supreme talent in other aspects of skiing as well. And while Khai will outski just about any of us average mortal skiers, because he slays everything, he made it to the pro level based on his rail game. And it's hard to be just known for urban. But that sums up Khai's career pretty much. And then when he was done in the streets, he went corporate. Crazy. That's the podcast. At this point, I'm heading to the hospital, so I will do no more. But I do have a couple favors to ask of you. First, I want to ask you to review me wherever you listen. I would give you detailed directions on how to do this, and I've done this time and time again, but I know you can do this. I know you can hit that purple podcast button on your iPhone. You can scroll down, find my podcast. You can scroll down to the stars and rate them star-wise. I know you're capable of doing it, and I appreciate the shit out of that, so thank you for that. I also want to thank you for supporting my incredible sponsors who make this podcast happen. They are Elan Skis, Outdoor Research, Stanley, and Best Day Brewing. Have a great week, everyone.